start.
Yes. Super. See, I saw you singing. That's great. You bet. I gave you a hand up there. Did you see me? I'm glad you joined in on it, right?
I recognized the net right away, and then I said this whole thing. I got her hand, Leal, she was polite though. She did it very well. I guess it's sure was.
They had several living bombs. They done all the street work and sewers. All that was dug with horses.
Right, yeah. See, when they did dug the auditorium down there, they scooped that out with horses.
Yep.
And then the WPA boys loaded up the Model T trucks with the shovels and everything. So I used to go down there, I was a little kid, I'd go down there and watch them.
Yeah. That's
Yeah, I'm just going to get a shot. You can have him. Are you sitting there? Okay, okay.
Oh, is he?
I'll get out of your way.
Did it work?
Yeah. So he's getting his music degree or something. Yeah, music for an application. Yeah, but he doesn't really want to teach. So I don't know what to do then. Yeah. I don't know. He's thinking, well, maybe just do social work and use his music somehow. Yeah, something like that. Okay. I was going to put my skirt on. No, this is not I didn't put high shoes on.
That's great. I just had to come and say hello.
What time is it?
Okay. Oh, good. You're going to hold hands and everything? All right. Very good. Thank you. Eileen, is it okay if I'm saying? Okay, I'd love to have a picture of you. I'll take a picture of your mom, too. Yes, please stay. Yes, please stay in there. That's great. Thank you. Be fun to get home. Put it all together.
Minneapolis. Minneapolis. Yeah. Aren't I brave? I've driven a lot farther than that.
Our 100 years in Leal, what started out as a potluck picnic kind of turned out to be a great big day for all of us. And we're so happy that you were all able to come back, visit with your people and your friends, and we've really enjoyed working with you. We feel very fortunate that one of our graduates is writing the pageant, has written the pageant, I should say. Is writing, she's telling me, so it's probably going to be changed as we go along. But it sounds like it's going to be something very interesting. And at this time, I'd like to introduce to you our pageant writer and narrator, Sharon Peterson Kane.
They said, tell y'all, there's drinks over there. Daisy people sit on this shelf.
Yeah?
Well, I'm advertising.
Yeah. Yeah, they've been trying to get it. I suggested that, but they say they got it tied in.
How loudly do I have to speak?
Louder.
Raise your hand in the back if you can hear me. Oops, better have some more. How's this? Is that better? Back row, can you hear? Okay, sounds good. As this pageant was taking shape, it was clear there were many memories, lots of them. Many people, faces, events, and places come to mind, but it's impossible to include them all. We each have our own set of memories important to us, the good times, the bad, the happy, and the sad. This little walk through history is just one interpretation. I decided early that music would be a part of this. I hope you'll tap your toes and hum along with any tunes that bring back special memories to you. It was easy to choose a theme song, Dear Hearts and Gentle People that live and love in my hometown. I feel so welcome each time that I return, that my happy heart keeps laughing like a clown. I love those dear hearts and gentle people who live and love in my hometown. What a wonderful day this has been, celebrating the life and times of Leal. Let's take another quick walk through history and use your imagination. Put yourself now in the founding days of this wonderful community. Leal, a Scottish English word meaning faithful, true, or the land of the faithful. Leal was platted on December 3rd, 1892 by the Minnesota Loan and Trust Company, a subsidiary of the Sioux Line Railroad, and filed on December 16, 1892. My dad was a month old at that time. He and his family, including his 10-year-old sister Amy, were living in the Recklin house across the street from the church. Leal grew in numbers when a large group of settlers came down from the community of Uxbridge in Ontario, Canada. Some of the first families to arrive were the Bascom's, Whitfields, Kilbournes, Walks, Butlers, and Fluels. Welcome to Leal. By 1905, you could find Perry Pickett in the bank, William Thompson in the meat market, John C. Hilborn in the machine shop, Charles Peterson, Ed Lundy, and Joe Ritter were storekeepers. J.C. Hayden ran an elevator, hardware store, and feed mills. Louis Martinson could be found in the blacksmith shop. The little community also boasted a flour mill, cream station, hotel and cafe, pool hall, barber shop, and can you believe it, a movie house with an ice cream shop. Soon after the establishment of Leal, the residents began constructing a school. It was completed in 1901, but destroyed by fire just 4 years later. The new school was built in 1905 on West Railway Street. Sounds like a big town. The large wooden structure boasted 4 large classrooms. Many of us are very familiar with that building. One of the early teachers there was Amanda Longfellow, a descendant of Henry Longfellow, the poet. February 24th, 1902 marked the date of the incorporation of the Leal Methodist Episcopal Church. Funds were raised for building a church, and in 1903 it was dedicated free of debt. The total cost was $6,000. Being the only church in the community, the congregation consisted of members of all faiths: Baptists, Presbyterians, Lutherans, Quakers, and Methodists, all working together. Reverend Hewson was the minister, and Reverend Moore, the district superintendent, preached the dedication sermon on Easter Sunday. Sing-alongs around the piano might feature such songs such as the band played on, My Wild Irish Rose, Let Me Call You Sweetheart, Hello My Baby, or Wait Till the Sun Shines, Nellie. Already in 1904, the telephone was installed in Leal. Leal had its first newspaper in 1907 with the Leal Advance. P.A. Pickett was editor, running west every day out of LA City. There were 2 running each direction out of Leal. I read that Vice President Theodore Roosevelt was to deliver an address on the state fairgrounds at Hamlin and St. Paul, and the NP Railroad offered greatly reduced rates so more people could take advantage of this great opportunity. The decade of 1910 and 20 brought us many famous authors. Great books were being read, authored by D.H. Lawrence and Somerset Maugham. Poetry by James Joyce and Robert Frost was new on the scene, and popular tunes included For Me and My Gal, Alice Bluegown, Smile, There's a Long, Long Trail, and the marching tune for the soldiers in World War I, It's a Long Way to Tipperary. The foxtrot came into fashion. Bobbed hair was in style. Roald Amundsen, the Norwegian explorer, reached the South Pole, and the Panama Canal was opened. In 1915, Einstein published his theory of relativity. The news from Europe was grim. In 1914, World War I began, and in 1917, the U.S. declared war on Germany. Irwin Wilson contributed some wonderful thoughts and memories about the effect this had on the families in our hometown. I would like to quote him now. Many of our community's young men signed up. On the day they were assembled at Leal to be sent east to camp, a big farewell parade was held in their honor. They marched from the Wilson house near town to the corner of the school ground, east to the church, south down Main Street, and reassembled on the school grounds. Bands were playing, flags were flying, people cheering, commands by the sergeants were called out. It was exciting, thrilling, and exhilarating. People lined the parade route or marched alongside with them. A few short patriotic speeches were made and a few short declarations of victory were given. The crowd was deeply moved, not many dry eyes. People torn between pride and sadness mixed with anxiety. They broke ranks and we all had about 15 minutes to say goodbye. My brother Clifford was the one in the ranks. I said goodbye to him in a hurry and ran all the way home and cried and cried. These were hard times for the small community, but life went on. A village government was organized and Leal became incorporated. The first recorded city meeting was held on June 30th, 1917, with the Board of Trustees being J.C. Hilborn, M.W. Wilson, and George Pearson, chairman. Louis Martinson served on the board from 1918 to 1950. The school continued to grow. It was decided we needed to house the gymnasium and the girls' and boys' bathrooms. Our terminology in our day was the girls' basement and the boys' basement. Remember that? Remember the ladder that took us down to the gym floor? As classes were added in the high school, so was faculty, and the number increased from 1 teacher to 3 in 1919. You could buy a lady's dress for $3.18 and perfume for a mere 50 cents. A horse and buggy sold for $75. But if you already had the horse, you could get the buggy for a mere $35. The Roaring Twenties. Who can forget the Charleston? In 1929, the country experienced Black Friday when the U.S. stock exchange collapsed, beginning the world economic crisis, the Great Depression. The Leal Bank had continued to provide services for the community until in March of 1922 it closed its doors for reorganization. J.W. Whitfield, Christ, and Howard Wilson guaranteed the bank's debt, and the bank continued to operate until early 1926, when it was closed. The building was then converted to apartments and rented for many years. School continued to thrive. The first high school graduation was held in 1920. Florence Whitfield was the proud graduate. In 1923, they saw the largest graduating class. There were 10. The sports program was always a big part of their activities. Early memories of Elver Abrahamson are driving to Dover School in Mr. Austin's car and taking hours to get there. Also going to Daisy with horse and sled. Duff Wilson often told of using the Soo Line handcar to go to Wimbledon. Get this, the team members used the handcar, taking turns pumping, and at one time had to lift the car off the tracks to let the train go by. I hope they won the game that night. Harry Ritter served as the postmaster from 1921 to 1923. He was also the coach for the basketball team for the 21-22 season. George Butler then became postmaster, managed the telephone exchange, and operated a cream buying station. Charlie and Amy Peterson continued in the Peterson Mercantile. John C. Hilborn was working at his farm machinery sales and parts business. He had hired Jack Kernahan for harness repair and harness making, plus shoe repair. Then in the 20s, there came a whole host of machinery manufacturing companies besides the original 2 or 3. Tractors began to appear. McCormick Deering, John Deere were the favorites at first, and then Fordson, Minneapolis Moline, and the first Caterpillars. Also, in 1920, the Standard Oil Company received permission to erect a station in Leal. And in 1927, Northwestern Bell had a franchise, and a central office was set up in Leal. By June of 1929, Otter Tail Power was supplying electricity. The Farmers Union organization was organized about 1928 for the purpose of gaining information about farming, such as laws governing farming, methods of selling and shipping of grain, giving input to the National Farmers Union, and serve as a local meeting place for the farmers to just get together and discuss the business of farming. Besides being an educational center for the farmers, the organization also served as a social outlet for the community. After the meetings, which were held monthly, the members and guests might have a whist party, oyster stew, or holiday party. Some of the early members were Peter Abrahamson, Albert Tolston, Harry Peterson, Hugh Myers and son Glenn, Arthur Abrahamson, Clarence Burke, Frank Lannon, Burl Carr, Floyd Bardell, the Nelsons, Chris, Walter, and N.B., and Ernie Fritsch, George McCann, Adolph and Anton Christ, and Victor Marsh, who served as a secretary-treasurer for the group for the most of the years that it was active. The dirty 30s, the Depression, the Dust Bowl, crop failures. This was happening in the Midwest, but throughout the nation and around the world, life went on. The planet Pluto was discovered in 1930. Mahatma Gandhi started a civil disobedience in India. And Al Scarface Capone was jailed for income tax evasion. The expression New Deal was coined by FDR, 32nd President of the United States. In 1933, Prohibition was repealed in the U.S. Remember the Dionne quintuplets? They were born in Canada in 1934. Nylon was patented. The Lincoln Tunnel was opened between New York and New Jersey, and the Golden Gate Bridge took form in San Francisco. The ballpoint pen was invented, but sadly, World War II was gearing up. In 1930, when Leal reached what was to be its peak population, 105 citizens. Remember when I spoke of the Depression, the Dust Bowl, the crop failures? These events made life hard in this little community. But I'm reminded of a quote that I heard my dad say as few as about 6 weeks ago. Tough times don't last, but tough people do. This pretty well describes the friends and neighbors in our hometown. Remember, too, that Prohibition had been repealed in 1933. Well, that very same year, the first beer license was issued to Ludwig von Beck. Music and sports had always been and continued to be important to the community. Some names that you would find associated with the orchestra in 1933 and 34 were Russell Shape, saw him here today, John Alderman, Earl Martinson, Harold Martinson, Wallace Whitfield, Harley Medley, Gene Austin, Patricia Butler, Lois Bardell, Luella Wanvik, George Butler, Dean Ritter, John Grover, Annabelle Grover, Phyllis Myers, Bernice Nelson, Evelyn Bardell, and Wallace Norrell. I'm sure they made beautiful music together. How would you like to come up against the likes of this basketball team? Philip Martinson, Russell Shape, Harold Cassidy, and Harold Martinson. Gracious hospitality abounded in our hometown. I'm told of tea parties hosted by Amy Peterson with her fine china and cloth napkins, living up above the store. Ladies would come dressed in their finery to enjoy the afternoon. Sooner or later, a train would rumble through town, causing the teacups to rattle on their saucers and the salt to shake in the salt cellars. There were 2 eastbound and 2 westbound trains every day then. The express and then the locals, which would stop for passengers. On Mother's Day in 1938, a program was given at the Methodist Church for all pioneer mothers and families of the community, when each mother was given a carnation and seated in the center section of seats. Mrs. Louis Martinson, Esther, suggested the program. Mrs. Antone Christ, program committee, presided. This was followed by special music and many short talks on the most outstanding events of early days. Mrs. Martinson spoke, Mrs. Cribbs, Mrs. Oglesby, Mrs. Howard Wilson, and a sermon by the present Reverend Charles Meyer. It was described as a novel and enjoyable observance of Mother's Day. Agnes Didier contributed a wonderful piece describing the 30s. We don't know who wrote it, but I want to borrow a few lines. It really makes me think of the progress that we've made. In the 30s, we were before television, before penicillin, the pill, polio, antibiotics, and frisbees, before frozen food, nylon, Dacron, and the Kinsey Report. We were before radar, fluorescent lights, credit cards, and ballpoint pens. For us, a chip meant a piece of wood. Hardware meant hardware. Software wasn't even a word. In those days, bunnies were small rabbits. Rabbits were not Volkswagen. We were before FM radio, tape recorders, electric typewriters, word processors, electronic music, and disco dancing. We were before pantyhose and drip-dry clothes, before ice makers and dishwashers, clothes dryers, and electric blankets, before men wore long hair and earrings, and women wore tuxedos. We were before the coin vending machines, jet planes, helicopters, and interstate highways. In 1935, made in Japan meant junk, and making out referred to how you did on an exam. In our time, there were 5 and 10 cent stores where you could buy items for 5 and 10 cents. For 1 nickel, you could ride the streetcar, make a phone call, buy a Coke, or buy enough stamps to mail 1 letter and 2 postcards. The 40s, another experience with war. December 7, 1941, saw the Japanese bombing of Pearl Harbor, and war was declared in Japan. Sugar and fuel rationing followed. May 8, 1945, saw the end of the war in Europe. VE Day was declared. But on August 6, 1945, we witnessed the bombing of Hiroshima, Japan. 8 days later, Japan surrendered and World War II was finally over. During all of this, life went on. The Alaskan Highway was opened. The first electronic computer was built. Magnetic recording tape was invented. 1944 saw the first non-stop flight from London to Canada. FDR was elected for an unprecedented 4th term. The new look in female fashion is in vogue. Many of the young men from our community left to serve in the war. It was a hard day for all of our community when they left, and a real reason to rejoice when they returned. July 13, 1944 was a sad day for the Leal community. 2nd Lieutenant Russell Reculin was shot down, killed in action in St. Lo, France. He earned Pilot's Wings, Good Conduct, ETO, American Defense, National Defense, Purple Heart, and 2 Air Medals. grocery store changed hands a few times in the 40s. Darrell Muncie followed the Petersons, who later, it is believed, traded the business for a farm in Minnesota. Imagine that. Bob Johnson operated the store for only 6 months before selling it to Wright Mosier and Alvin Loberg. The name was changed to the Loberg Mercantile at that time. Alvin soon asked his brother Willie to come and manage the store, and Willie accepted, buying the business for himself in 1948. The store soon became the town's main gathering place and served a lot of purposes besides selling groceries. It served as a message relay station, a temporary barber shop for hairdressers who came once a week from Valley City and other towns, a payment center for Bell Telephone, a drop-off for a dry cleaning pickup service, a cream station, and headquarters for candling and sale of eggs. What a business! Coinciding with Willie's arrival in town was the arrival of the new young elementary teacher, Esther Moline. An interesting aside, her first grade class was to become the last graduating class in Leal. Well, it wasn't long before Willie took Esther as his bride, and they continued to be an important part of this community until their retirement when they moved to Valley City. J.B. Wilson came on as postmaster in 1942 when the location was in the former bank building. He was to serve in this position until 1975. When he wasn't busy behind the window, he could often be found working on some musical enterprise. Remember the polio benefits? And then there was the entertainment for the various meetings and gatherings that were held. Of course, the church choir ranked very high on his list. I can remember in the early 50s when there weren't very many singers in the choir. He and my mother, Sophie Peterson, sang a duet every Sunday so there could be music at every service. There were many social events for all ages in the community. Girls and boys 4-H clubs had been busy for some years already. Some of the leaders that were so generous with their time in the 40s were Mrs. Carl Brandt, Mrs. Whitfield, Mrs. Borgild Culp, and Lillian Abrahamson for the girls. Walter Brooks, Clarence Anderson, J.D. Wilson, Glenn Myers, and Harold Martinson were found working with the livestock and crops. The Farmers Union was meeting regularly for the farmers to share the joys and concerns of farming. The women were organized as the Leal Homemakers. Can't you see them on their way to the meeting at Irene Abrahamson's? Bernice Christ calls them meeting to order. Lila Myers will be taking the minutes. Mrs. Bardell will report on the condition of the Treasury, and Lillian Abrahamson will present the program for the month. Willie Loberg and one of the teachers, Oliver Thingolstad, were scoutmasters. When the Boy Scouts were organized in 1949, Huldah Reculin served as institutional representative, Gerald Didier, troop chairman, and J.B. Wilson, Harry Peterson, Alvar Abrahamson, and N.P. Nelson as board members. Dr. A.D. Ottinger from Valley City helped to organize the troop. This was sponsored by the Leal PTA. Another major sponsorship by the PTA in the 40s was the hot lunch program at the school. The 50s, so many major events. Times are moving. Technology is the name of the game. Technological advancements abound. But we still suffer the emotions of war, this time in Korea. We had several of our young men again marching on foreign soil. I can remember how we used to wait anxiously for the next letter from my brother Don. Occasionally he sent us a tape. Remember those new magnetic tapes? Well, Duff Wilson had one of those new magnetic tape reel-to-reel recorders. The latest thing, and he used to help us send tapes and then play downs for us as soon as we got them. What a treat to hear his voice when he was so far away. Color TV appeared in the U.S. Ads appeared in the papers reading, "Wanted men and women to train for new careers in TV. Supervising jobs, studio jobs. Needed directors, models, and set designers." Polio season was a time to be feared. The newspaper noted that 1954 may be the most difficult season yet, despite hope of victory with a trial vaccine. Queen Elizabeth accedes to the throne in England, and Ike is elected the 34th President of the United States. Remember the phrase, "Say sweetheart to your grocer"? Speaking of food, at the Forum Cafeteria in Fargo, you could get 2 slices of bacon and 1 egg for 18 cents. Or cooked cereal and hot milk for a thin dime. Sunday lunch featured a half chicken with gravy for 78 cents, Or if you prefer, you could have a breaded pork chop for a mere 42 cents. The lignite producers cite objections to the industrial use of natural gas. Tension mounted as desegregation of schools is attempted in the South. There was a flurry of excitement in 1957 when the Russian space satellite Sputnik was launched. Shortly thereafter, the U.S. sent up its first satellite, the Explorer 1, and the space race was on. All of this reflected in the motto for the senior class of 1958, into orbit. In January of '59, we admitted the 49th state, Alaska. And 8 months after Alaska, Hawaii became our 50th state. By the end of the year, the Soviet satellite had taken photographs of the moon. We were getting closer to that first step on its surface. Fidel Castro was about to become the Prime Minister of Cuba, and the St. Lawrence Seaway opened. Community days were always looked forward to as a major summer event in our hometown. Much like today, many people gathered, races were run, contests were held, and much socializing happened. Of course, there was always the parade. Not long, but a parade. Contrary, of course, to the one today. Wasn't that wonderful? Carolyn Joyce and Leal remembers that we always managed to escape the rain. Chalk us up to one more year. Basketball was the mainstay for entertainment in the wintertime. Lyle Fox was the coach of the Pacers, coached them to many victories. 1953 and 54 were big years for the girls' team. The midgets placed third in the state tournament in '53, and in 1954 they were at it again. The sports headline in the Valley City Times Record read, Leal in first round in girls' state tournament. They had defeated Galesburg in the regionals and went on to play the first round in Castleton. They took home the 4th place trophy. A note in the Times Record read, congratulations to Lyle Fox and the team and the boosters of the Leal community who gave them such loyal support. Mr. Fox was a relative newcomer to the community, coming here to teach in the high school. Lucky for him, the new upper grades teacher was young, single, and a great catch. Stella Eisinger had come from Wishing. She eventually said yes, and they were the first recorded wedding held right here in the Methodist Church in Leal. Other great teacher catches in Leal have been Esther Moline Loberg, Betty Crispin Jorison, and Hilda Everly Anderson. Hasn't our community been blessed? The Prairie Players, a community group organized by Duck Wilson, actually began in the late 40s, but was really rolling by the 50s. They put on one-act plays to raise money for the school, teen canteen, and other benefits, particularly remember the polio benefit. In 1954, an article in the Times Record again read, Leal Tops and Play Event. They had presented Wilbur's Wild Night. It was directed by J.B. Wilson and Mrs. Harry Peterson. The cast consisted of Lyle Fox, John Alderman, Alice Diltz, Duane Torgerson, Arnold Diltz, Ione Frederick, Agnes Didier, and Cecil McCann. I remember that one. They were the only group to win a superior rating at the annual Kiwanis-sponsored one-act play contest in Valley City. Other plays that may bring back memories to some of you are The Shock of His Life, Grandmother's Neck, and It's a Great Life. Denim was high on the fashion list, as well as the no-iron wrinkled cotton. What goes around comes around, but nothing compared to the felt poodle skirts of them. And of course the saddle shoes for the teenage girls. The popular music of the day reminded us of the white sport coat and a pink carnation, and Elvis wouldn't let us forget about the blue suede shoes. Wow, look at that can-can. In 1958, a successful election was held that would merge several school districts. Leal, Rogers, Daisy, Bowers, Coleman, Bennett, Stewart, Laketown, and parts of Pierce, Ladbury, Hobart, and Getchell. The new district was known as North Central. This action would mark the end of the Leal School as the there was an engraved block from the class of 58, Leal High School. The school lives. Take these last few moments to remember to think back on some favorite special times of your class. Now we enter the swinging 60s. That was quite a decade. Remember the book Lady Chatterley's Lover? That was written in 1961 by D.H. Lawrence. What controversy. Solzhenitsyn, Gore Vidal, Norman Mailer were other familiar names on the literary scene. Another controversial book was Slaughterhouse Five by Kurt Vonnegut. John F. Kennedy was elected the 35th president of the U.S., the youngest ever. The space race was still on. Yuri Gagarin, the Russian cosmonaut, was the first man to travel in space. Remember the emotions at the time of the Bay of Pigs invasion? And the heavy hearts when the Berlin Wall was constructed? The country was stunned when on November 22nd, 1963, our president was assassinated. Just 5 years later, Martin Luther King fell to an assassin's bullet. And 2 months later, Robert Kennedy fell to an assassin. By the end of the decade, we were well into the Vietnam War. What a traumatic time. But there were good times and progress, too. LBJ 36th president signed the Civil Rights Act and also legislation on Medicare. We were also hearing about the war on poverty. We continue to work on all of that. The first human heart transplant was carried out successfully in Cape Town, and the prototype of the Concorde was shown successfully in France. Richard Nixon was elected the 37th president, and Golda Meir stepped into the post of Prime Minister of Israel. July 21, 1969 stands out in history as the day Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. He and the crew of Apollo 11 performed an unheard-of feat. Remember the phrase, "The eagle has landed." A small step for man, but a giant leap for mankind. The big news around Leal in 1962 was that after 8 elections, the bond issue carried for North Central. On January 20th, 1962, the issue carried and the district was bonded for $400,000. A 40-acre plot of land was purchased along Highway 1 as near the center of the district as possible. An architect was hired, the plan was approved by the school board, and construction began in July of 1962. At the time of the dedication of North Central School on October 6, 1963, the district consisted of 230 sections with a valuation of $2,100,000. There were 6 bus routes and the enrollment was 320 students. There were 18 teachers. A kindergarten was organized by parents of beginning North Central students in the spring of 1963 with 18 students attending. A few years later, kindergarten became a required class of the district. Most of those first students were graduates of the school in 1975. The Leal Community Days continued to be popular. Carolyn, Joyce, and Linnell sent along some fond memories that I would like to quote. The parade seemed huge, but it couldn't have been more than a couple of Leal blocks long. The floats were beautiful. The band sounded great. As a band member, I can only remember one and only one marching lesson from a very frustrated band leader. In retrospect, our band was a moving band, not a marching band. Other memories, the 3-legged race and the gunny sack races from the hardware store to the bank corner, yummy noon lunches of homemade barbecues, an ice-cold pop in the glass bottles right out of the tank filled with cold water. The after we're into the 70s, and you're right, we're seeing them again. My daughter, when she was very young, found one of my skirts, as a matter of fact, it's the one Julie's wearing, that I had worn years ago. She had never seen such a thing, and noting the length, or maybe I should say lack of length, remarked, "Mom, I didn't know you were a cheerleader." I didn't know if I should admit that I'd actually worn it, and to church at that. The 60s were also the days of the hippies. The free spirit, flowers, bare feet, and the peace signs were the order of the day. Remember that? Wow, the long hair and bare feet. The Rod and Gun Club of Leal and Rogers had merged by now, meeting twice monthly. They were very 1973, and the next year we experienced Watergate. The scandal eventually led Richard Nixon to resign, and Gerald Ford picked up the reins as our 38th president. The complete New English Bible was published. Thor Heyerdahl was at it again. This time he crossed the Atlantic in a papyrus raft, the Raw II, in 57 days. There was unrest in Ireland, and airplane hijacking seemed to happen almost daily. Celebrations were held throughout the country to mark the country's bicentennial, and Jimmy Carter became the 39th president. The Mousetrap reaches its 10,000th performance in Britain, and the punk era starts with aggressive music and fashion soon to follow. Solzhenitsyn wrote Gulag Archipelago, and Alex Haley was acclaimed for his latest book, Roots. It was to be the basis for the very popular TV movie series that got us all thinking about our heritage. The fashions included the wonderful, colorful polyester. Women were enjoying the comfortable pantsuits, and the brighter, the better. The wardrobe of the well-dressed man always included the plaid polyester pants, topped with a very versatile tan polyester jacket. Way to go, Ed. In 1971 and 72, we lost two of the main buildings in town. The hardware store and the school building were taken down, and the south entrance to Leal was closed. Under the Hogarth brothers' ownership, the elevator has undergone many changes. The machines have been updated to the latest technological equipment. 22 steel bins, each with a 25,000 to 30,000 bushel capacity, were erected in 1972 and again in 1987. In 1979, a large storage shed, 120 feet by 400 feet, was erected west of the elevator and has a 675,000 bushel capacity. Eventually, another shed with a 25,000 bushel capacity was purchased, making a total of 1,494,000 bushel capacity. Larry Connect has been the manager since '74. The Prairie Gals Homemakers Club was organized in February of '77 with members from Leal, Rogers, and Daisy areas. The first officers were Charlotte Jorson, President, Hilda Anderson, Colleen Hare, and Brenda Hagerman. Bev Wilson was the postmistress from July to November of '75. Leal then became a contract station, and Pearl Pritchard handled the mail. Here we are already up to the present day. Times have changed. Remember the 3-cent postage stamp? Well, just a few years ago, the world's rarest stamp, a British Guiana of 1856, was sold in New York for $850,000. John Lennon, a member of the Beatles, is shot. Ronald Reagan was elected the 40th president, and soon after was wounded in an assassination attempt outside the Hilton Hotel in Washington. Remember the play Mousetrap? It finally closed after 30 years, being the longest-running play in London. Lech Walesa, the leader of the Polish train union Solidarity, was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. The hostage crisis in Iran demanded much of the news time, and we found ourselves watching the Gulf War live on our televisions. Space activity abounds. Captain Bruce McCandless is the first astronaut to go freely into space without a lifeline, and the Soviet spacecraft Soyuz T-10 is launched with 3 cosmonauts aboard to link up with the orbital station Soyuz 7. The space exploration has been remarkably accident-free, but we must remember the disaster of the Challenger and the loss of lives. Most recently, we've been excited when our own Rick Eaves was one of the astronauts that made history when they were able to link up with the wayward satellite. Think of the advances in the healthcare field, new methods of surgery, organ transplant, diagnostic tools like the CAT scan and the MRI. The women's movement has had quite an impact. Our founding mothers would be astounded to see their great-great-granddaughters employed as attorneys, truck drivers, physicians, mechanics, and clergy, as well as the traditional roles of teachers, nurses, and secretaries. All of this while raising families. Concerns for the environment are in the headlines every day. Recycling is big business. As we speak, the Environmental Summit is meeting in Rio. Did you ever think that you would live long enough to see the removal of the Berlin Wall? What a wonderful day that was. And the fall of communism. Times are changing in Leal, too. Many of the families had retired and moved from the community, most to Valley City. We lost a couple more buildings. The bank building came down and the store was closed. I remember the excitement and emotions that were felt during those 2 days of auction. There were memories shared those days. The post office closed and Leal became a rural branch of Rogers. But the stalwart little community continues to move ahead. Barnes County Rural Water Users was formed in 1974 to provide safe, clean, potable water for residential, light commercial, use. 10 small cities are served by this system, which covers approximately 2,333 square miles of area in the Barnes, Stutzman, Ransom, and Lemoore counties. Leal was among the first of the communities to receive the benefits of this service. Can you imagine the look of astonishment on the faces of our early pioneers if they could hear of this program? And what about the $13 million Cominco American anhydrous plant that was established in 1987? They would be astounded. The facility is equipped with a 40,000-ton refrigerated storage tank and is able to ship out 3,300 tons per day. Presently, the terminal is manned by Leal Camp, Mark Wire, and Greg Grintle. In 1982, the final payment on the bonds was made, and North Central School was paid for. Besides the academic excellence, there are many extracurricular activities and organizations that play an important part during the school year. The present enrollment is 268 students. There are 15 teachers, plus special education. The district covers approximately 331 sections and has an assessed valuation of $3,423,200. The present board members are Dwayne Thompson, Terry Bryn, Susan Jorison, Robert Ryerson, Philip Mueller, and Charlotte Jorison as business manager. Meanwhile, back in Leal, a basketball court was built in 1982 on the old school grounds, and Otter Tail Power installed lights in 1988. There are still several social groups active. The Rod and Gun Club, present officers of that are Scott Anderson, Tom Jewett, Jay Fields, and Kevin Harsted. There are a couple of birthday clubs active. They provide wonderful social events with a chance to celebrate one of the members' special days each month. Homemakers has been active through the years, and there still is a group working. In 1980, a group of ladies started a whist group, meeting at the home of June Ernie. Even when several of the group moved to Valley City, they continue to drive to the Leal area for the monthly afternoon card party. The lucky ones take home a prize for high and low score and for taking a trick with a deuce. They're still meeting during the winter months. There's a wonderful feeling of sociability and friendliness that has always had and still does exist among our dear hearts and gentle people that live in our hometown. I would like to thank a lot of them right now for the dedication to this wonderful Centennial Day. Hilda Anderson and June Ernie have been the able co-chairs, Bill Werner, vice president, Arveline Chris, secretary, and Vernon Anderson, treasurer. There were many, many others who worked on committees to see that all of the events carried out today. Hasn't it been a wonderful time? A thanks to all of you who worked so hard to make this day so special for all of us. And now I hope in the background we have the mayor, Larry Connect. Can he appear before us? We have the councilman, Dave Lockton and Steve Undum. And Beth Undum, auditor. There are many memories that have been built into this special day and many emotions. I'd like to quote from the words of Bernice Wilson. She's shared her feelings and said it all so well. As I look back over these names and experiences, I am reminded that good old times consisted more of fine people and relationships than of buildings and economics. From the historical perspective, it might be observed that during the past century, Leal has undergone nearly full cycle, from humble beginnings to prosperity, and on to its present status without losing its charm and character. Leal will always be home territory for me, end quote. From all of us, thank you for saying it so well. I think it's fitting that we share the feeling of the dear hearts and gentle people in song. If I can find the spot on the tape, I want to sing the verse, and you will please join me in the chorus. There's a place I'm glad to be, and it's back in Leal, ND, where the friendly neighbors smile and say hello. It's a pleasure and a treat to meander down the street think she did a good job of choosing what she brought to us. And most of all, we thank you for being here. You are the ones that made it an enjoyable day for us. It was worth what we did, and thank you for being here. We'll have the drawing for the rug at this time. I have a grandson that said he would like to draw, and I said, we're related. We can't do this. So Nicholas is supposed to choose someone in the crowd to come up and draw the person that will be taking home Esther Martin's rug. Nicholas, will you pick someone? It doesn't have to be anybody you know, just someone. That's a big decision, I'm telling you.
Go get him. Go get him.
Take it down, Ed. And Kevin can read the name and the address. I think he made a good choice. Laddie Dale. And I don't even need his address. He's right here. He can take it. It's at the end of the platform. I'm not responsible from here on in. Yep. Long live the class of 58. Dakota, you have an announcement. Before those of you that presented histories for the book, if you haven't picked up your pictures already, I wish you would stop at the fire hall to pick up your pictures and your writing. Those of you that are interested in an ice cream cone, go over to the Swan Man, compliments of the Leal Centennial community, and enjoy. We have had so much fun, and really, I don't know how to say thank you, and I'm sure the committee didn't expect this good a crowd to take part all day. So thank you very much, and do enjoy your ice cream. Free on